Hi, I'm Jack Stanton-Stock and I'm a member of the England Next Generation squad, part of the British Triathlon Performance Pathway. We are supported by lots of coaches throughout the year, in season, off season, over camps abroad and around the country. However, at home I'm mainly supported by my parents, and here is my mum to talk about that experience.
I'm Tabitha, I'm Jack's mum, and I'm mum of Charlie, who's 17 months older than Jack, and Darcy, who's 5 years younger than Jack. They're both fairly sporty teens. Charlie also does triathlon and is a paracyclist, and Darcy loves gymnastics and triathlon and hockey and horse riding. So we run around a lot, chasing after the children and their sport. As a child, I wasn't really that sporty. I wasn't too bad at 1500 metres, but I much preferred horses. So I don't really come at triathlon from a parent perspective where I've ever competed at the sport myself.
So when did I get into triathlon, and what was it like watching me develop as a triathlete?
Well, you started triathlon when you were nearly 12, so you've been playing a lot of rugby up until then, and any other sport you could get your mitts on really. But the local tri club had a waiting list for a couple of years, and eventually they gave you a trial. They gave a few athletes a trial to see if they would fit in, and you really enjoyed it and they wanted you to be part of the club, so that was fine. I booked in for a few triathlons, but you managed to qualify for the IRC, which I didn't even know what that was at the point.
I think that was my third race.
Yep, I think it was your third or fourth triathlon.
So that was a bit of a shock to the system.
It was. I think you'd learnt to ride with cleats 2 weeks before then.
Yeah.
And in the actual race day, it was heaving down with rain, and your bike shoe came off in your hand when you got off the bike course, and then you left your helmet on and ran out of transition and had to go back again. But you came 24th, so you weren't doing too badly, even at that stage.
What was it like watching me develop through the years, so through IRCs onto the Super Series?
Well, it was just a bit of a whirlwind really. I thought that you just done really well that first year, and then I thought you wouldn't make the IRC the following year because you were lower year in TriStar 3, but you did, and we went to Glasgow and you did really well. No, you came 8th actually that year at Mallory, and the following year,
yeah.
You came.
I was top year in Glasgow.
In Glasgow, yeah, and you podiumed there, which was your first national podium. So it was really good, and it was really rewarding to watch you progress.
And then there was the big step up to Super Series, which was...
Yep, big step up to Super Series.
What was that like? Having to travel around quite a lot more.
Well, it was kind of... There was a lot more travelling, but it was nice because not the whole year depended on one race. So the IRC was hugely stressful because it was like just one go at it once a year. Whereas the Super Series, you actually got to, space it out over 7 races. So I found that a bit less stressful and a bit more enjoyable.
Okay, so what's the best thing about being a pathway athlete?
The best thing has to be the weekends away. I really enjoy the social aspect of it all, and when you race well, I love it when you race well. So being so ecstatic that I really don't mind how sweaty you are when you hug me on the finish line. The pride and the joy that I get from watching you race really well is just pays for it all.
And what's the biggest challenge, would you say?
Biggest challenge? Oh my goodness. Just the logistics of everything, actually.
Just like my manager.
Tying everything together, from getting you to have enough rest and do enough training and make sure you have enough sleep and make sure you're still doing your schoolwork. It's quite a juggling act.
As a parent, how do you feel like you are supported by British Triathlon with these challenges?
Well, they've been quite supportive from the beginning really, from when you first got into the Super Series and into the academy. So I feel even in those days where I would be stressed about how the gear restrictions worked and whether the rollout was going to be all right and whether you had wheels and tyres that were compliant with the racing. They've supported me all the way through, and I've felt like I've learned a lot about nutrition and hydration, particularly at the beginning and all the way through really till now. Even in lockdown now, the ENG parents have a nice supportive weekly chat with the coaches and just catch up to make sure we're all right.
How do you feel when I'm racing and training? What are your emotions and what goes on your mind?
Okay, so watching you race is always quite stressful. I do remember you watching a triathlon once and saying how stressful it was watching compared to actually doing it.
Yeah, I was on the sidelines watching my brother, and yeah, that was interesting. Other end of the stick, it was interesting.
Yeah. So I always find myself running around trying to get a good view of you and trying to get some good pictures of you. But there's things like at Mallory a couple of years ago, you raced and you were doing really well in the relays, and then you kind of disappeared off the back of the bike pack, which was quite unusual. And when you next came round next to me, I could see that you'd obviously fallen off and got back on again because you were grazed all down your shoulder. So yes, it's worrying as the bike packs gets faster and more furious. The spectating gets more stressful.
And what about training? How do you feel about watching me train?
Well, I've been watching you train for many years, even though you've only been doing triathlon 5 years. You've been swimming since you were 8, so I've watched a lot, and I quite enjoy watching you train. It's quite cathartic.
What was it like watching me race abroad for the first time?
First time racing abroad was Super League about a year and a half ago in Jersey. You'd had a really good month because you just won the school games, and then 2 weeks later you won the British Champs. And Jersey was a couple of weeks later than that, so it was a little bit stressful, worrying if you'd be able to do as well again because you'd been flying really high. But the whole weekend was a brilliant weekend. Everybody really enjoyed themselves.
It's a different race format as well, wasn't it?
It was a completely different race format, so it was swim, bike, run. And the atmosphere at Super League was just so electric because they had lots of big loud speakers and music and all the pros were there, so it was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a fantastic weekend, and you podiumed 3rd, so it was perfect.
So what about some of the other races I've done abroad, like Kitzbühel and Riga?
Okay. So Kitzbühel and Riga, you were travelling with a team and not with me. And I guess those were the first times really that I've not been involved with your race prep properly.
Travel and all of that.
Travel and all of that. So that you were away with other people, and that was stuff that you'd done before training. But it felt really odd not being involved with your proper race prep, so not knowing that you'd had enough sleep or that you'd, eaten properly before the night. And I felt like you were so busy having a good time with the team, I was slightly concerned that you weren't looking after yourself. But I didn't have to worry. The ENG coaches are brilliant, so Matt sorts you out.
We were doing lots of stretching beforehand, days of prep before. In the rest day, which we had in Kitzbühel, we were told to enjoy it, but obviously keep it to the racing afterwards, the day after, and all of that. How is our home life different because of the training that I do?
Home life changes quite a lot, I guess, because the sport has become far more serious than it ever was. So I really didn't think that triathlon was 3 whole sports when you started, doing it for a couple of hours on a Saturday morning. You've always done swimming, but then having to find the bike and the run clubs and then as time has gone on, it's more difficult to juggle it all and get you enough hours and to keep on top of your schoolwork and your siblings' schoolwork and their training and what they want to do, and a little corner for me as well.
So what advice would you give to other parents taking on this challenge of an athlete parent?
I think I would just say try to be as laid back as you can be about always getting to training. I've always been quite stressed about always turning up and always being consistent, but I think occasionally to have an evening off or to spend the evening doing homework or something else is really quite important. The rest, I think, I've learned is as important as the training. And they're very young, and they're only young ones.
So that's a little insight into what it's like being a pathway parent, and you can see what we're getting up to by following us on Instagram and Twitter at ENG Triathlon.